There is a kind of silence that doesn't fix you. It only drains you. At first, being alone feels like clear thinking, a way to find yourself again, a calm recovery after the loud noise of the world. You tell yourself you need this, that this is how you keep your peace safe. But as time goes by, something shifts. The silence starts to talk back. The stillness that used to calm you begins to repeat questions you cannot run away from. And you start to see there is a thin line between being alone and being cut off. And most people do not realize when they have stepped over it. Carl Jung once said that loneliness does not happen because you are by yourself, but because you cannot share the things that are most important to you. That is the secret most people do not see. Loneliness is not about having no one around. It is about having no one who truly understands you. When you stay away too long, you start to lose the small links that help your inner world connect with the outside world. You might still be in a crowd of people, but the way you talk to each other starts to disappear. You cannot quite explain what is happening inside your heart anymore. In the beginning, being alone feels like being in charge. You can handle your world, your feelings, and your meetings with others. You get to decide who is allowed in. But the dark side of this control is how it makes your life smaller. The slow narrowing of your feelings until even the simple act of being noticed feels like a problem. You start to mistake being hidden for being safe. That is how being cut off hides inside being independent, by pretending it is strength. If this feels familiar, stay with me. When people spend too much time on their own, they often start thinking they have moved past the need for others. It's a quiet way to protect yourself, a way to turn a necessity into a point of pride. I don't need anyone becomes a shield, but behind that shield is often a story of being hurt. Jung believed that every defense has a hidden truth inside it. The person who says they do not need others usually learned that needing people led to pain, so they turn their loneliness into pride and call it peace. You can see it in how they talk about their daily habits. The comfort of being alone becomes a ritual. The morning coffee, the quiet walks, the hours spent in deep thought. But this routine hides a fear, the fear of being misunderstood, judged, or pushed away. It's not that they like being alone more than being with people, it's that being alone never makes them feel small. When they are alone, no one reflects their insecurities back at them. No one stops their inner story, and yet, without being interrupted, that story never grows. Here's the confusing truth Jung spoke of. The more time you spend away from others trying to find yourself, the more twisted your idea of yourself can become. Because who you are does not grow in a vacuum. It grows through meeting others, through different views, and through the friction of human contact. When you pull too far inside, your ego begins to swell. It starts thinking it is the whole picture, when in reality it is only one small part of a much bigger mind. Jung called this swelling the shadow of becoming yourself, when the path toward understanding who you are turns into only thinking about yourself. It's hard to notice. You tell yourself you are looking deep inside, but what you are really doing is going in circles around the same thoughts and the same old wounds until they become who you are. The inner voice that once helped you begins to sound more like a critic, and because there is no one there to show you who you really are, you start mistaking your own inner echoes for wisdom. Most people don't see this change. They just start to feel heavy, like every talk takes too much energy. They start to fear simple connections. They explain it away as being sensitive, or say they have finished with small talk. But under those words is something more basic, the fear of coming back out. The longer you live inside your own head, the more strange the outside world feels. People's laughter feels too loud. Their presence feels like they are breaking in. And the longer you stay away, the harder it is to close the gap. There is another part here, one Jung hinted at but never fully fixed. He believed that the mind wants to be whole, not just comfortable. When we stay away, we protect our comfort, but we lose our wholeness, because being whole requires meeting others. It demands being challenged. Without that, the inner mind starts to grow weak. It's like a muscle losing strength. You become too used to your own inner weather. You forget how to stand in someone else's storm. This is why being alone can quietly change how you care for others. When you only live in your own view for too long, other people's lives start to feel like just ideas. You stop feeling with them and start analyzing them instead. You become a watcher, not a part of the world. And even though that distance can feel like being clear-headed, it's actually just being disconnected. When being alone becomes being cut off, you cannot touch life from behind a glass wall. Still, there is something tempting about being unseen. When you are alone, you can control how you look, or just let it go completely. You do not have to perform, you do not have to explain, but you also stop being seen by others. And being seen is not about being vain. It's part of being human. We need others not to finish us, but to remind us that we are real. When Jung wrote about the shadow, he described it as the parts of ourselves we throw away,
the ones we cannot face. Being cut off is where that shadow grows the fastest, because when you are alone, no one questions your ideas. You can tell yourself any story about who you are, and there is no one to test if it's true. You can believe you have healed when you have only hidden. You can mistake being still for being at peace, and being numb for being mature. The sad part is that some people's deepest pain, the pain of not being understood, is exactly what pushes them into the kind of loneliness that makes sure they will never be understood. They keep pulling back into silence, hoping it will make them whole. But silence, if left alone, becomes a wall, and walls cannot hear you back. There is a moment, very quiet and hard to see, when being alone turns from something holy to something that is just a hideout. You stop resting in it and start hiding in it. You stop finding yourself and start avoiding yourself. And because no one can see that line but you, it happens without anyone knowing. You wake up one day and realize you no longer miss people. You just fear them.
And yet somewhere, deep inside, your mind remembers. There is a quiet pain that never goes away. It is the part of you that still wants to be met, not as the person you became while hiding, but as the person you were before you felt the need to be safe. That wanting is the proof that the need for connection never dies. It only goes to sleep. You start to wonder how long someone can stay alone before they forget how to come back, because coming back requires being open to being hurt. And that openness is the one thing being alone cannot teach you. And somewhere inside that question, in the quiet ache between the safety of being alone and the risk of being with others, the shadow begins to whisper, are you still protecting yourself, or are you now a prisoner of yourself? People often make a hero out of the lone thinker, the person who stayed away to find the truth. But Jung saw a threat in this. He believed that a mind disconnected from human contact can become focused only on itself, like a room full of mirrors. The reflections grow until you cannot tell which version of you is real. You begin to create your own inner stories, believing it is enlightenment. But what if it is just loneliness dressed up as wisdom? There is a reason being cut off creates both wise people and madness. When you spend too long inside your own mind, everything becomes a sign. Every silence feels deep. Every feeling feels like a message. It is a kind of inner swelling. Your inner world grows without any outside walls to hold it. Jung warned that the mind, like the world, needs balance. Too much looking inward without being grounded in the outer world leads to breaking apart. You start splitting into different roles inside your own head. The thinker, the critic, the hurt child, the savior. You live whole lives inside, but none of them can hold your hand. The longer you stay unseen, the more you begin to fade away from your own life. Conversations start to feel like you are translating a foreign language. You change your words as you speak, trying to bridge the gap between your deep inner world and the simple world of others. But no translation is perfect, so you begin to give up. You talk less, you show less, until one day you realize you are only good at being alone. And yet, even here, the mind does not stop reaching out. It sends dreams, strange coincidences, and a feeling of being restless. It wakes you up at 2 a.m. with a memory of someone's laugh. That is your deeper self trying to bring back balance, reminding you that growing as a person was never meant to be done in exile. But how do you come back after so long? The answer is not found in forcing yourself to be social or making yourself talk to everyone. It starts with the smallest risk, letting someone see you again, letting your imperfections be visible. Jung called this the work of joining things together, not choosing between your inner and outer worlds, but letting them live together. Yet that living together requires being humble, the humility to admit you need others, not because you are weak, but because you are only truly whole when you are connected. And that realization, that being with others is not a distraction from finding yourself, but a part of it, is what starts to soften the dark edges of being alone. Because maybe the way home is not about leaving your silence behind, but learning how to let someone join you inside it. There is a quiet sadness that comes with returning to the world after being away for a long time. It is not loud, it is soft and almost gentle. You realize how much life kept moving while you were gone. People changed, conversations moved on, small ways of connections continued without you. And part of you wonders if you still have a place anywhere. That is the price of pulling away. While you were protecting yourself, time was moving forward. And now you stand at the edge of returning, not sure which version of you the world will see. The first thing you notice when you start connecting again is how exposed it feels. Being alone teaches you how to be in control, but being with others demands that you let go. Every talk becomes a mirror again.
And mirrors, after years of avoiding them, can be painful. You hear the sound of your own defenses in real time, the pause before you answer, the small practices in your head before you speak. It is strange. You thought being alone made you free, but you realize it also made you stiff. You learned to live without any friction, and now that friction feels like a failure. Jung believed that everything we avoid becomes a shadow, so even your need for others, when held back, turns into something darker. It becomes a neediness hidden by a fake detachment. You start wanting connection from far away, making it seem perfect because you are not actually in it. You imagine relationships as either perfect or impossible, and both are safer than being real. That is what being cut off does. It keeps your ideals safe, but leaves your heart hungry. When you've been alone too long, other people stop being people. They become possibilities, characters created by your own imagination, the friend, the partner, the person you trust. You give them a meaning before you even meet them, and that meaning is not about them at all. It is about the parts of you that are still waiting to be seen. That is why connecting after being alone can feel so confusing. You are not meeting others, you are meeting the hidden parts of yourself through them. Jung wrote that the meeting of two people is like the mixing of two chemicals. If there is any reaction, both are changed. The lonely mind fears that reaction, because change means not knowing what will happen. You cannot control who you will be after you connect, so you stay where the chemistry cannot reach you, in the safety of your thoughts and the predictable world of your solitude. But life was never meant to be predictable. It was meant to be felt. And yet here is the irony. The deeper you go into being alone, the more sensitive you become to real connection. The same silence that once kept you apart can also make you more aware. You begin to notice small things others miss. The shake in a voice, the way someone looks away when they are in pain. Being alone can make your empathy sharper, but only if you come back. Because empathy without connection is just watching. It is knowing how to feel but having nowhere to put that feeling. When people spend years alone, they often create a story in their head about why they are different. No one understands me becomes both a truth and a shield. But the longer that story lives without being challenged, the more it grows on its own. Jung saw this in people who moved into fantasy, mistaking their inner symbols for real wisdom. It was not being crazy, it was a defense. The mind, hungry for a reflection from outside, begins creating its own mirrors.
You see signs everywhere, coincidences that feel like special messages. It is not madness. It is your sense of meaning starving for company. There is a danger in explaining your own mind to yourself for too long without any other view. You start giving huge importance to regular feelings, seeing every emotion as fate. That is how being cut off turns spirituality into an obsession. Jung knew this well. He said that the deeper mind, when not grounded by human contact, can overwhelm you with symbols too big to handle. The result is not wisdom, it is an inflated ego. You begin to believe you have risen above ordinary life, when really you are just running from it. But you cannot stay away forever, because eventually your inner self begins to push back. The dreams get louder, the restlessness gets sharper. You start to feel the weight of your own silence pushing against you. Even the peace you once loved starts to feel old. That is your inner self calling you back, not to others yet, but to a balance. It is saying, you have learned enough about being still, now learn how to move. And so you start to take risks, a small talk here, an invite there. You listen more than you speak, but slowly your voice starts to remember how to sound. And in that remembering, something soft happens. You realize you are not as alone as you thought. Everyone, in their own way, carries a bit of loneliness. Everyone hides a quiet corner of themselves. They are afraid no one will understand. And when you feel that in others, your own loneliness starts to make sense. It was never proof that you were different. It was proof that you were human. You begin to see what Jung meant by becoming yourself, not staying away, but coming together. It is not about running from the world to find your soul. It is about learning how to bring your soul into the world without losing it. Being alone teaches you who you are. Being with others shows you who you can become. Without one, you break into pieces. Without the other, you fade away. Wholeness is not being still or being in motion. It is the rhythm between the two. But this rhythm cannot be forced. You cannot hurry your return. Sometimes the only bridge back to others is being honest, admitting you forgot how to connect,
admitting that you got lost in your own mind. When you say that truth out loud, something amazing happens. People do not walk away. They come closer because they know that place too. Everyone does. There is a strange relief in realizing that being alone was never your enemy. It was a teacher. It showed you what silence sounds like, what being real feels like, and what you truly value when no one is looking. But it also showed you what you cannot live without: being seen, laughing together, and the unexpected magic of being known. You needed to lose it to understand it. And maybe that is the deeper reason behind the dark side of being alone. Not to punish you, but to clean you, to strip away the noise until what is left is the simple truth that you are never meant to go through life alone. Not because you are weak, but because meaning itself happens between people. Even your inner world, Jung said, is made of relationships between different parts of yourself, between shadow and light, between who you think you are and who you truly are. So it makes sense that the outer world would follow the same rule. When you stay away too long, you live with only half of your mind, the inner half. And that inner half, when left alone, starts believing it is everything. That is why the journey back feels so strange. You are not just joining the world again, you are joining the rest of yourself. Every look you share, every talk, every imperfect meeting is a way of becoming whole again. You start to remember that connection is not just a feeling, it's spiritual. Still, the quiet of being alone will always call you back gently. It's not something you leave behind. It becomes a part of you, an inner home you can visit, but no longer live inside forever. You learn to move between worlds, between the depth of your silence and the warmth of being with others, between thinking and speaking. And that movement, that balance, becomes the sign that you are whole. But some nights, even after you have come back, you will still feel the pull of the silence. You will miss the simplicity of not being seen. And that is okay, because being alone never stops being special. It just stops being a safety trap. Its beauty is meant to remind you of who you are, not to take the place of the world. Jung once wrote that the greatest gift of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But he never said you could do it all by yourself. Becoming yourself is not a solo task. It is a conversation between you and your past, between you and others, and between you and life itself. And maybe that's the quiet healing of having spent too much time alone. You start to see connection not as noise, but as meaning being made visible. You start to feel again the gentle mass of being known, the soft feeling of being loved. You realize the darkness of being cut off was never empty. It was a space waiting to be filled with someone's presence. And now when you go back to being alone, it feels different. It no longer feels like something is missing. It breathes. It listens. It welcomes you home, not as a way to escape, but as a way to stay balanced. You sit there in that silence, and for the first time, you do not feel alone. You feel surrounded by everything you once feared, and everything you finally understand. And maybe that is what Jung was trying to tell us all along, that the dark side of being alone is not the darkness itself. It's forgetting that light was always meant to find you there. And if you listen closely, you can still hear it somewhere inside the quiet, waiting for you to open your eyes.